Ellen Langford is a party girl who is supposed to inherit her father's multi-million-dollar gift company. He sends her to a small town to get familiar with her roots, where she meets Jake Collins. At the Toys for Tots charity gala, the chair of the committee is looking for Ellen. Mrs. Worthington spots her fiancé, Gray Pittman. He is distracted trying to close a deal and doesn't care that Ellen is late for her presentation. Mrs. Worthington still asks for his help to find her. Ellen is in a separate room at the event doing gymnastic tricks for the crowd. A man is impressed and writes a generous check for the charity, but he takes it back and dares her to do a tougher stunt for quadruple the amount. Ellen can't say no to a dare and attempts it, but she gets distracted when Mrs. Worthington calls out to her and crashes into a tree. When everyone starts clicking her, she poses for the photos. Her father, Jim, reads the headlines about the incident the next morning. He is the CEO of Home and Hearth Gifts. He isn't happy with the party heiress title assigned to her. His assistant Alice is discussing the article with the colleagues when Jim comes to find her. Alice knows she's in the boardroom, but Jim wants to meet Ellen alone. Ellen has some ideas for what they can do with their tagline, but Jim wants to discuss the article and how embarrassing it was for him. Ellen claims she only did the stunt for charity because someone dared her. He wants her to understand she represents the company and will inherit the business as the CEO. He is now thinking of postponing his retirement because he needs someone he can trust. Jim thinks it's his fault for spoiling Ellen too much after his wife Nora passed away. Alice reminds him of a special box since it's his turn this year to write a Christmas letter. Ellen nervously asks to have lunch with him, so Alice clears his schedule. Ellen feels bad about what she did and wants to do something to correct her mistake. She feels like she owes it to the company and her mom. She also feels the need to prove it to Jim that she's more than a party girl. She suggests she can hold another fundraiser, but Jim wants her to learn something more about the spirit of the company. He thinks their company is about ordinary people from small towns who buy gifts. This gives him an idea and he knows what he wants her to do. He asks her to take a business trip to Snow Falls to deliver the Christmas letters to her Uncle Zeke. It's his turn to write them, but he wants her to see the place where it all began. Gray doesn't like that she needs to leave so close to their Christmas Eve trip to Maui. There are still a few days left, and she assures him she will be back in time. She's supposed to manage her whole trip in just $100. Her tickets are already paid for, and she has a place to stay at Zeke's Inn. Her father and Zeke started off with that amount, and he wants her to understand the value of it. Gray thinks it's not enough, but Ellen is determined to take this on as a challenge. As part of her deal, she's not even supposed to use her credit cards. She also can't reveal her real identity because people will treat her differently. Gray still doesn't understand why she's torturing herself like this. But Ellen is tired of the party heiress title and wants to prove to Jim that she can take care of things. Gray starts looking through the box, which has a greeting card with the original business plan for their company. When Jim and Zeke came up with it, they wrote it down on the nearest thing they had. Since then, they write to each other every year to give an update about what happened that year. They have been following this tradition since before emails came. At this point, she thinks she's getting late for the airport. But Gray looks at her ticket and laughs. She's supposed to take a bus from New York to Snow Falls and meets her dad at the station. She assures him she will handle it and gives up all her cards before leaving. She approaches the bus driver and asks for baggage check. He plays along and takes her bags from her. She's looking for her seat on her ticket when she bumps into Kathy. Since the one next to her is free, Kathy informs her she can sit anywhere. It's clear Ellen has never traveled in a bus because she's also looking for a button to ask the attendant for wine. When they reach Snow Falls, Ellen gets distracted by the carolers. The driver reminds her about the bags, and she thanks him. As the bus leaves, a man approaches her bag with a tree and hits it. The bag slides across the road and hits a car. The driver gets out to scold her about trying to cause an accident, but she feels like this is bound to happen when she took her eyes off her bags for a second. He tries to help with her clothes, but she gets embarrassed about what's inside. He offers to drive her, but she would rather wait. When she learns the place doesn't have other cabs or any cell reception, she knows he is her only option. The cab driver is Jake, who can tell she's from New York. He used to stay there, but he came back to Snow Falls. She thanks him for bringing her bags, but he meets her again at the reception. He's also the manager of Zeke's Inn and drives the taxi sometimes to help out. She claims she wants to meet Zeke, but Kelly informs her he left in the morning. They know Zeke is generally very mysterious and he gave no details about when he will be back. Ellen panics and asks Jake to call Zeke, since he might be expecting her. She is about to give her real name, but decides to go with the name Ellie London. Jake informs her that the reception there is mostly bad. Besides, Zeke never carries a cell phone, which even she knows. Jake still offers to give her a room with a landline. Ellen informs Jim about Zeke not being there, and it seems like he already knows. She wants to leave the letters at the front desk and head back to New York. But Jim thinks it's important to deliver the letter personally in Zeke's hand, since it's part of the tradition. He also reminds her of their deal. Ellen is anxious because her Christmas Eve trip is in 3 days and she promised Gray. But Jim pretends like he can't hear her and cuts the call. Jake brings the change for the $100 she asked for. He informs her Debbie's Cafe is the only place to eat there if she's hungry. He even offers to walk her there since he needs coffee. Jake stops to give a homeless guy, Baxter, some change. He looks hopefully at Ellen too, but she continues to walk. She claims she doesn't want to give money to Baxter because she's on a budget. She informs him about her fiancé, Gray, who also thinks giving money to the homeless hurts them. When Jake finds it funny, Ellen claims she doesn't exactly agree with Gray, but she still thinks it's selfish to give them money instead of encouraging them to earn on their own. While that works as an interesting theory, Jake still knows Baxter appreciates every penny. Ellen notices how crowded the cafe is and thinks she should have made a reservation. But Jake asks her to not worry, since the owner, Debbie, is his aunt. Debbie assumes Ellen is his date and welcomes her warmly. But Ellen clarifies she is just a guest at the inn and is staying for one night. Debbie feels bad she will miss dinner with Santa on Christmas Eve. It's a tradition where a Santa house is set up in the church hall for the kids to raise money for charity. Ellen seems interested in the event, but Jake informs Debbie she might have a complicated relationship with charity. Debbie still informs her about a silent auction at the event. She thinks it will be fun for Ellen, but she has to leave for New York. When Ellen mentions Zeke, Debbie thinks she has come to the right place. She points at the booth where the idea of Home and Hearth Gifts Company was born. Ellen claims to be a friend of the family and asks if Debbie knows Jim too. She's surprised to learn Debbie dated Jim in high school, but he soon met Nora, Ellen's mother. Debbie wanted to hate her, but she was very sweet and an amazing person. Debbie also thinks they made a perfect couple. Jake also remembers that Jim and Nora got married at the inn. Debbie also heard Nora passed away a decade ago and feels bad for Jim. But she gets back to reality and asks Ellen to choose what she wants for dinner. Jake grew up there and has a lot of family in town. Ellen notices Debbie was a singer, but Jake claims she never got too big. As Silent Night starts playing, she asks why Jake came back to the town from New York. He claims the big city life was never for him. He's very distracted because he hates the song. He walks over to the jukebox and angrily presses the buttons to make it stop. Debbie wants Jake to know Ellen seems like a nice girl, but he's not interested and determined to close himself off to others. Ellen is trying to meditate in her room when she gets distracted by some carolers. When she gets back in bed, she screams because she thinks there's an animal in her bed. Jake comes to check and finds a hot water bottle with fur. He jokes about most people enjoying the bottle because it helps keep them warm. When he also makes a comment on how she's not dressed for the climate, she asks him to leave. The next morning, one of the guests complains about getting clotted cream instead of whipped cream. Jake apologizes and promises to give him credit. Ellen is impressed by how professionally he handled the situation. Jake claims Captain Williams is a very sweet guy who comes every year there for Christmas after his wife passed away. While he's at the reception, he gets a call for Ellen. She hopes it's Zeke, but it turns out to be Gray. He is frustrated about not being able to call her on her phone. She claims she can't come back because Zeke isn't there yet. He reminds her his office Christmas event is that night, and he wanted them to make an entrance. She feels bad, but she also has to respect tradition. He claims he can get Karen from accounting to go with him, which irritates her. But the call drops and Jake explains the lines go down sometimes when it's too cold. She is frustrated she can't get back to her fiancé sooner and asks about Zeke. She feels like Jake isn't trying hard enough. He reminds her the lines are down and Zeke doesn't have a phone, so there's nothing he can do. But Ellen can't stay there for another night because she has run out of cash. She thinks about calling her father, but knows she has to figure this out on her own. He thinks money is tight for her and offers her a job so she can stay there. Their housekeeper and Kelly are on leave that day, so Jake and Ellen have to clean 8 rooms. She takes a deep breath and starts picking out the trash. But she breaks a vase and falls on her equipment while trying to change the sheets. She even tries to vacuum the room, but it leads to an explosion. She feels bad about not being good at this, and he asks what she does for a living. Looking at a poster, she claims she's a baker. She thinks she is safe because he doesn't have a kitchen there. But Jack knows another way in which she can help. Debbie helps her into an apron and asks her to separate the eggs. While she's cleaning up, she comes across a family photo of Jim and notices how similar Ellen looks to Nora. She finds Ellen staring at the eggs when she gets back. Debbie already knows Ellen has no idea about baking. Debbie also reveals she has realized Ellen looks exactly like her mother Nora. When she asks why she is lying, Ellen explains that she is doing this for her dad. Debbie agrees to keep her secret because Jim thinks it's a good idea to do so. Debbie shares that Jake was once married to a Wall Street broker he met in college. They were married for a year in New York, till she left him for a millionaire client. She loves her nephew like her own son and doesn't want him to get hurt again. Ellen assures her she's only there to learn from the town and not hurt anyone. Debbie believes her and decides to teach her how to bake to help with her cover. There's a storm and snow falls, and everyone is advised to stay inside. Debbie is proud everyone loves Ellen's cookies at the inn. Williams asks for the manager because he wants to complain about something else. This is when they hear Jake bringing in some people. Sheriff Paul explains that the storm knocked out the power in a part of the town. This is why they're moving some people to the closest shelters. Jake is heading out again because he needs to get more firewood. He doesn't know how he will fit so many extra people, but thinks he needs to do it because no one can be left out in the cold. Ellen realizes something and prepares to go out. When Jake is back with the firewood, Debbie asks why Ellen is not with him. Jake didn't know she was out, and they soon find Ellen coming back to the inn with Baxter. She wants Baxter to rest there and get warm. Jake is surprised, but welcomes him in. He scolds Ellen for going out by herself in the cold. She teases him about being worried for her. He claims he was only worried because she is underdressed. But he still admits it was quick thinking on her part to bring Baxter in and thanks her. She claims he has set a good example, but he doesn't know how to take a compliment well. After assigning as many rooms as he can, Jake gives his room keys to a couple so he can bunk with Baxter downstairs. Another couple sitting there offers a sofa in their honeymoon suite. William decides to bunk in their sofa and generously gives his keys to Jake for another couple. This just leaves Kara and her 2 daughters, but Kara insists she can be comfortable downstairs. But Ellen also has a spare couch, and she offers it to them. Ellen shows them to the room, where Kara assures her daughter Olivia that they have enough time so Santa can find them. She wanted to be with her husband Dennis, but he is stationed in Germany. Kara asks Ellen to hold her baby, which makes her realize something, and she offers them her bed. When Olivia can't find her stuffed dog, Douglas, Ellen also gives her the teddy in her room to keep her company. Jake brings blankets for them and teases Ellen for being friends with the baby. When Ellen is cleaning at night, she notices a door ajar. She finds Jake sketching inside, but he tries to hide it from her. He thinks he's only a doodler. When she asks about all the stuff there, he claims this is all he could get for the silent auction. They're trying to raise money for a local soup kitchen. She asks about a Santa bauble and thinks it might be worth $1 million. He lets her take it because he has another one. He hasn't had time to approach local businesses for donations, so these are the only items. When she notices his sketch, she thinks that could fetch a lot of money. But she mostly wants him to know he's very talented. She's also impressed by how much he does to help people, but he thinks she is helpful too. When she's heading to bed, he asks her to wait because he wants to show her something. She borrows warmer clothes and they head out for a walk. She thinks if he makes some bold moves, he could do a lot with his talent. He doesn't think bold moves always work. She lets it slip how she knows about his divorce, and he understands Debbie must have told her. He explains that he was a struggling art student in New York when he met his ex-wife. One day in the middle of a romantic dinner, she broke off their marriage. This is when they started playing Silent Night, and Ellen finally understands why he hates the song. She also gets that some things take time to get over. They finally reach the place with the ice sculptures designed by him. She is very impressed and claims that the art and the artist is a big hit with her. She shares that her mom died when she was a teenager, and that is something she can't get over. She claims her mom came from small town like this one. For years, she could never get herself to go back there since she was too scared. She then started living her life like nothing mattered. But coming to the town and meeting him has made her realize some things matter more. He blushes and asks if they should kiss. She wants to, but stops herself right before it. He feels awkward for assuming something when she was talking about her mother. But she feels worse because he's a great guy. She feels good with him, but needs to leave right away. She sneaks into the room so she doesn't wake up Kara and her daughters. She wonders what she is doing, but gets an idea when she notices the Santa bauble. She picks up some flyers from the store and heads to Debbie's in the morning to ask for a favor. She bakes some cookies and wraps them in jars. She then drives down to all the local merchants and asks them to donate something in exchange for the cookies. She collects a lot of items till she finds someone unwilling to donate at an electronics store. She still convinces him somehow, and has more than enough items. Paul thanks Jake for letting all the people stay in. They watch Ellen approaching and she explains from where she got all the stuff. Jake is left speechless and excited, and doesn't know how to thank her. When he hugs her for doing all this, Gray turns up. He drove out there when he heard about the storm to rescue her. She introduces him to Jake, but he makes some nasty comments. Ellen is hurt that Gray was rude to Jake, but he explains he didn't like how Jake was hugging her. She clarifies that Jake was thanking her for the charity, but Gray thinks she needs to stop helping out people and get ready for their trip. She can't leave yet, but promises they will head out the first thing in the morning if Zeke doesn't turn up till then. She asks him to rest while she helps Debbie with the Christmas tea. She also reminds him about who she is pretending to be there. When she leaves, Gray is very confused to find Kara and her family in the room. Ellen comes to Jake to pick up the car keys for the Christmas tea. She apologizes for Gray's behavior, but he claims he understands. He feels bad about last night, because he took her out after knowing she was engaged. He thinks she has been honest with him and should have respected that. But he feels like he has been able to trust someone after a long time, and let his feelings get the better of him. She feels bad about lying to him and wants to share something. But he gets called for work and she decides to leave. A guest is appreciating Ellen's Christmas cookies when Gray comes looking for her. He is frustrated about the bad cell reception, so she tries to cheer him up with a cookie. He can't believe she made it herself, since she's more of a party heiress. She asks him to be quiet about it because she doesn't want anyone to know. She likes that people are treating her as a normal person. Gray thinks she can be friendly with them, but she will never be one of them. While packing that night, Ellen starts reading the letters from December 1981, when the company was formed. She reads all about how Jim discussed with Zeke about how fast Ellen was growing up. She reads another one which mentions Nora's illness, and she gets emotional. Olivia comes to tell Ellen they're out of hot chocolate, but notices that she's crying. She gives Ellen the bear back since he helped her at night. Jake ends up sitting next to Gray at a bar and they decide to be polite. Gray discusses how his family has never cared for traditions like Christmas, but he is drunk and congratulates Jake for getting Ellen to bake. He lets her real name slip and claims she's not a baker. Jake comes back to Google Ellen and finds the party heiress article. He feels like he has been fooled again. Ellen meets Kara and her kids when they're leaving and gives back the bear to Olivia. When Gray leaves with their bags, Ellen asks Jake if he has heard from Zeke. She wants to leave the letter box at the front desk, but Jake refuses to take it. He thinks the letters are very valuable to everyone in town, and he can't just keep them. When he makes a taunt about sending the bill to her company, she realizes he knows who he is. She wants him to know she never meant to lie to him. But Jake doesn't believe her and claims he left New York because of people like her. She takes the box back and finds Debbie outside. She is sad Ellen can't stay for the Santa dinner that night, but she has made personalized oven mitts as a gift for her. Ellen is touched and thanks Debbie for keeping her secret. Debbie finds Jake listening to Silent Night and asks if he wants to talk about it. Ellen panics when she can't find the letter from that year in the box. Gray thinks Jim must have forgotten it, but Ellen feels the whole point of coming there was to deliver it. She wants to go back to the inn to check if she left it there. Gray thinks he has been very patient with Ellen's nonsense, but he has had enough. He thinks the letters are stupid and is sick of her father's traditions. When they stop for gas, Gray assures her Jake will send them to her office when he finds the letter. She asks why he thinks Jake would know who she is. He admits that he made a drunken mistake and told Jake, but he doesn't think it matters what the locals think about her. But it matters to Ellen, since the whole point was to learn something from the locals. Since Gray still thinks she doesn't belong there, Ellen gives him back the ring and breaks off their engagement. She gets off the car and takes the bus to Snow Falls. A woman entertains the guests at the dinner and announces Santa's arrival. Ellen arrives there and asks Jake if he has seen any letter. When he asks about Gray, she shows him her finger and that she broke off the engagement. She feels like some bold risks need to be taken sometimes. She admits that she never wanted to come to the town because she would miss her mother. But when she came there, Jake and everyone else made her realize it's easier to deal with things when you have people you trust. She then bids on the Santa bauble, and they smile at each other. Debbie calls for their attention because Santa has a message for them. Santa wants to read out a letter from an old friend at the town. Ellen realizes he is Zeke, and he is reading the letter her dad wrote him for Christmas this year. Jim mentions that he plans to step down so his daughter can become the CEO. He also mentions he's sending her to the town incognito so she doesn't get any special treatment. Ellen hugs him, and Zeke explains he wanted to stay away from the town so the people could get to know the real her. They were all hoping she would come back, even if they weren't sure. Jim is there too, and is glad he made this trip to see her. Ellen feels bad for not delivering the letter herself, but Jim explains the letter was never in the box. He had sent it to Zeke beforehand so he would know what to do. Jim also explains that Ellen's real test was to win over the people of the town, which she has already done. Ellen is excited to show Jim the collection she has assembled, and has some ideas that include the town for next year. Jim is glad she's taking charge as the CEO, but claims they can discuss all that after Christmas. Ellen notices Debbie and thinks he should go and meet her. Debbie decides to sing on the stage after many years as their special guest. As she starts singing Silent Night, Jake finds Ellen and asks her for a dance. He teases her because she is famous, but she thinks it's an honor for her to dance with him. He asks for permission again, but they both know this is the perfect time to kiss each other.